Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to the review of the second watch that I picked up on my New York trip last month. When I reviewed the first watch, the Metric, I dropped a rather strong hint at the end of that video, including a number of winks as to what brand this one was. It is of course an Islander, the in-house brand of none other than Mark Frankel from Long Island Watches. Now let me be crystal clear, this is not a sponsored review. Mark does not do sponsored reviews. Indeed, he recently made a video about how he doesn't do sponsored reviews. I bought this watch from him directly at the Worn & Wound fair. Full disclosure though, he wouldn't take my money. We bought him a nice French dinner a couple of days prior and he gave me the watch for free. So this one is effectively a gift from a friend. You know, if you want to come up with a conspiracy theory, then go for it. But there was never any suggestion that I was under any obligation to make this review video. And don't worry, there will still be moans and niggles as there always are. Now this is their Port Jefferson GMT model, and I asked specifically for the burgundy colour one because I like that colour and because I didn't have anything like that in my collection. But if you're a little bit flexible around your own colour choices, stick around for the price because he's got a deal on one of these at the moment, one particular colour version that has to be one of the best deals I have seen in all of 2024. Now I cannot show you the packaging because I was just handed this one in a little kind of slip pouch, but I can show you the packaging from the last Islander that I looked at on the channel 18 months ago. I would imagine that it still looks something like this. And let's get straight into dimensions and specifications then before we discuss the all important price. Now it's a 40-20, so 40mm in diameter with 20mm lug width, but it's definitely got a bit of a chunk to it. I think probably because it's 13.3mm thick. Lug to lug though, nice and wearable at 47.8. There's a 2mm taper on the bracelet, so down from 20 to 18, back up to 20 at the clasp. And as sized for my 7-inch wrist, it weighs in at 152 grams. Single dome sapphire with blue AR undercoating, 150 meters of water resistance, and you may have been expecting a Seiko NH34, but you're not going to get it. Instead, you're getting a Miyota 9075. You can't see it yet because of Islander's now signature lighthouse caseback. It's a really nice caseback actually, it's very smooth and very comfortable, but I will pop that caseback off for you to show you the 9075. Frankly though, it doesn't look any different from any of the other 9000 series movements. 24 jewels, hacking and hand winding, Japanese made 4Hz auto. It is nicely decorated, but it only winds in one direction like all of the other 9000 series, so you always get a little bit of spin on these, a little bit of wobble. What makes the 9075 a little bit special is that it's a traveler's GMT. It's a true GMT rather than a collar GMT. So to set it, you unscrew the crown, you pull the crown out to the second position, and you set the GMT hand and the minute hand first. You then push the crown back into the first position and you set the hour hand and the date complication second. Now, the advantage of this style of GMT is that when you cross a time zone and need to adjust your watch, you can do so very easily and you can do so without hacking the movement. You just pull the crown out and the hand jumps forward or backwards in 1 hour increments. The disadvantage of this type of movement though is that it doesn't feature a quick set date complication. So if it's a rotation piece, it is a somewhat tedious process to set the date every time you wear the watch. Pros and cons then, but the Traveler GMT, the true GMT, is definitely the one that has enthusiast appeal, shall we say. Alright, let's talk money because I don't make a thumbnail like today's unless I've got something to back it up. The regular Port Jefferson GMT is $579 US. Now that is free USA shipping and $15 shipping for the rest of the world. That's a good price for a watch containing this movement. These are available in a number of different colours, all of which feature a number of different colours on the dials. We've seen this trend emerge over the last couple of years. There are now heaps of brands putting seemingly disparate colours on a watch dial and making it work. And Islander certainly do that here. So $579 for a Miyota True GMT is pretty good. However, they currently have one specific colourway available at the moment for $347. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that's kind of silly money. I don't know how many he's got, maybe he was overstocked, maybe that's the least popular colour. I don't care. That price is sensational. And if you are in the least a little bit flexible regarding your colour choice, clearly that's the one to go for. You see what I mean? I was not joking about this one being insane value, was I? Anyway, moving on to the case finish, and the case finish is really nice. It's quite a thick watch as discussed, relatively speaking anyway. It's got a slightly Tudor-esque side profile, with that kind of slab side, fine horizontal brush, but with high polished chamfers running the length of both flanks. Now the upper lugs are brushed, the coin edge bezel is high polished, and it's a good size unguarded screw down crown at 7.3mm, again slightly reminiscent of the Black Bay series. And the crown features the Islander logo etched into it. Now the bezel itself is 120 click, bi-directional. And as I'm sure you can see here, the bezel is marked with the evens, but the dial is marked with the odds. There's a second set of numbers just at the very edge of the dial, meaning you can, in theory, track 3 time zones if you really want to. One with the main hands, one with the 24-hour markings on the dial, and one with the 24-hour markings on the bezel. It's a beads of rice bracelet with female end links. As discussed, only a 2mm taper to the clasp, but that's probably for the best, given that this one is quite chunky for a 40-20. Now, those links are satin brushed on the outer edges, high polished in the middle, although the 5 middle links are actually a single link, so it's a 3-link bracelet rather than the 7-link bracelet that it tries to look like. And it's an old school clasp, so pressed upper, milled scissor, double pushers and 4 holes of micro adjust, but you are going to need a tool to swap those positions. Alright, let's go macro, let's have a look at the dial on the hands. And there is a surprising amount of complexity here. All indices are applied, but they're not your traditional blocky indices with silver surrounds. Instead, they're much more 1970s style, much lower, and they don't have any kind of frames around them. The dial itself has a very mild texture to it, and a very mild fume, getting darker as it heads towards its edges. The Islander brand name and brand logo both printed above the pinion, GMT automatic and the depth rating printed beneath the pinion. And I really like the date complication. There's a nice beveled edge to the cutout, there's a printed frame in an orange colour matching a number of other details on the dial, including the GMT hand itself. It's colour matched, the date wheel is colour matched, and it's at 6 for symmetry, which I always really appreciate. Now the handset also has a little bit of the 1970s to it. They have high polished silver beveled edges, there's a brushed centre section, and there's plenty of space for lume, as you'll see in just a minute. Now around the outer edges of the dial, not only do we have minute markers, but we also have half-minute markers and fifth of a minute markers. Now, because this is not a chronograph, they're definitely more decorative than functional. And beyond all those markings, we have admittedly rather small odd Arabics for the GMT complication. And perhaps you haven't even noticed yet, but it's a bi-coloured bezel. The top half is burgundy, the bottom half is brown, but the difference between them is so subtle you only really notice it in certain light conditions. Overall, I really like the look. It has a very cohesive but also quite muted colour palette with a whiff of the 1970s about it, but also because of the use of those different colours, it manages to look quite modern and quite contemporary at the same time. Alright, lume then, there is plenty of it, including a fully lumed bezel insert. Obviously bi-coloured with predominantly green lume on the dial and the hands and blue lume for the Arabic numerals on the bezel insert, matching the blue lume on the tip of the GMT hand. And I love the fact that the Islander logo is lumed. That looks great. Now when I turn the speed up on this one, it does fade, but it fades evenly and there's just enough visible at the end of the test to still be usable. On wrist, it does wear quite chunky for a 40-20. It maybe feels like a 41 as a consequence. Now, that sounds ridiculous when it comes out of my mouth, but you know what I mean. These are relatively small objects, and a mil either way on any dimension can actually make quite a difference. It looks good though. I'm really happy with the burgundy colour that I chose, although if there was one of those super hot deals, I could easily be persuaded to pick something else up instead, considering the $200 saving. Alright, moans and niggles. I did say that despite the fact that Mark is a lovely man, I'm still going to complain about certain elements of his watch. Now they call it a skin diver, but it's not particularly skin diverish. It's a bit chunky and a bit more 70s than 60s to my eye anyway. The combination of single dome sapphire and prominent blue anti-reflective undercoating is inescapable. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you will have to embrace it because it's so noticeable. I should also complain about the 1-year warranty because I do every time I come across one. And then there's the bracelet. It looks alright and it's comfortable on wrist, but you can tell it has been built to a relatively modest budget, shall we say. The end links aren't quick release. The clasp itself is kind of last gen because it has a very basic pressed upper and no internal on-the-fly adjustability. And the links themselves could definitely do with a little bit of extra refinement. As I said, it still wears well, it just doesn't feel particularly premium when you're handling it. But then again, the Port Jefferson doesn't have a premium price tag. Even at the full retail of $579, this is still one of the best value Miyota True GMTs that I have encountered. And if you're alright with the green and yellow version, $347 is unbeatable. You're effectively getting a Miyota for the price of a Seiko. And I don't think I have seen anything, not even on AliExpress, that can touch that watch at the discounted price for sheer specs per dollar at the moment. So if you're alright with green and yellow, you should probably pause this video and buy one before he puts the price up. So there you have it. I said that last year Islander were really coming into their own as a brand and moving further and further away from the Seiko homages that were their bread and butter in the early days. I think the Port Jefferson GMT is their best watch so far, and I can only see the brand becoming more individualized and more differentiated from others into the future. Good on you for making it all the way to the back end of the video. If you fancy a GMT, but not this GMT, why not check out either of these two GMTs? Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again in the next one.